Welcome back. You're still watching Business Morning, the last edition for the week on Channels Television, and we're broadcasting live from Lagos, Nigeria. Our conversation today is going to be centered around the 2014 budget. I'm being joined on the program live from our Abuja studios by a fiscal strategy analyst, Eze Onyekpere. Eze, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
My pleasure.
And here with me in our Lagos studios is another economist, Gabriel Idahosa. Gabriel, thank you so much for joining us this morning as well.
Thank you.
Well, let's start with what we all know, and it seemed to be a little, it was a step out of convention, if you'd like to put it that way, although some people are like some of the lawmakers who actually commented on it said it's not totally an anomaly. And I'm referring to the presentation of the budget by the Minister of Finance. It's the first time since 1999 and the budget will not be presented physically by the President to the National Assembly. Will it make a difference in the fate of the budget?
No, certainly not. Rather, it's a matter of getting to what is normal, really. Is the Minister of Finance. She's the Chief Financial Officer of the federal government, and it's just normal that she should do so. The fact that we were doing something else before did not make it correct or preferable or conventional. It's just that we were not doing what we ought to be doing, and the former president started it, and it became conventional for the president to present it.
Okay. Now, Eze, I'm going to come to you. The budget is actually christened budget of job creation and inclusive growth. Is this just a mere statement, or does the content of the budget truly reflect this characterization?
Well, before I answer that question, I would like to address the former issue of saying that the president not being there did not make any meaning. I think it makes a very huge difference, because the president was supposed to address the nation, tell us how far they have implemented the 2013 budget, what challenges they faced, and then announce the thrust of the policy for 2014. And on that basis, the figures will be reeled out. So Nigerians lost an opportunity to hear their president talk to them about the fiscal governance system in the country. Now, the figures that have been reeled out, we are yet to digest it fully for us to begin to say whether it's a budget for job creation or a budget to grow the economy. But this is the normal cliches that are used at the beginning of every year when budgets are presented. But at the end of the day, you begin to see that there's so much difference, a gulf between what is promised and what is delivered at the end of the day. So I don't see so much difference between this budget and what we have had in previous years.
Now, do you agree to that as well, Gabriel?
He
says there isn't so much difference between what we're seeing in this present budget and what we saw in the last budget. And like he mentioned, yes, everybody was actually expecting that if the president had presented the budget, he would have given a breakdown of what the budget is going to look like for 2014, because it will drive how most contractors and the rest of it will make decisions. So that was like well, not totally in favor of everybody. And the Minister of Finance could easily have done that as well. So, most Nigerians will be wondering why that didn't really happen.
Well, it's a matter of the process. The minister would certainly give a breakdown, a much detailed breakdown at some point. Could be today, could be tomorrow, in the next.
No, they've actually have released some of those figures, and well, yeah.
So that's really the process. Laying it before the National Assembly is to submit the budget. Giving information about the budget, it's something that happens after that. Say the day after, or like we are saying now, a lot of the details comes out. But as for job creation, if you keep capital expenditure at 27%, it's difficult to see where you are going to create the jobs from, because you don't just create jobs from nowhere. If you just spend 70 whatever percentage of the budget to keep paying salaries and doing all the things you have been doing, then you don't create jobs after doing that.
Okay, let's just even look at that budget now. Let's look at those numbers. Recurrent expenditure is 3.7 trillion naira, and capital expenditure, like you already mentioned, is 1.1 trillion naira. And so I know that everybody knows how to add up the numbers. We have 3.7 as recurrent expenditure and 1.1 trillion naira as capital. That makes it 4.8 trillion naira. So how come the Ministry of Finance is saying it's 4.6 trillion naira as total budget for 2014?
Well, I've not really looked at the maths of it, but there could be some figures wherever. It's easy to add, as you say. I didn't really check out whether it was exact maths. But 4.6, 4.8, you've got to look at a budget of a country from the strategy rather than the minute details of whether it adds up. I think the minister can easily explain that at some point. So it's really the issue of what is the budget supposed to do, and if it's going to do that, is it going to improve the quality of life of our people? Is it going to set up on the path to correcting some of our previous errors? I think these are the issues that should address.
Okay, Eze, if you can, could you care to comment on this? Like I said, there's 3.7 trillion for recurrent expenditure and there's 1.1 for capital expenditure. Already we're having issues of some amounts of money missing from some certain agencies and the rest of it. Does this not still throw up that issue of transparency?
Well, I didn't quite get what you said, but the little I heard, if you look at this budget, I will call it a budget of continuation of the norm, because the capital, the appropriation for capital, the capital budget is nothing to write home about, because at the end of the day, even though they say it's 27%, you will find out that if it comes to the time of releasing the money and cash back in it, they may not give us more than 50% of this 27%. And then the recurrent expenditure, particularly the personnel, is still the preponderant thing in the budget. So we have a situation where we are continuing in the same old trajectory that has failed to create jobs, that has failed to improve the real sector, that has failed to grow manufacturing. Even the money we are projecting for payment of debts is higher than what we had last year. We are talking about 712 billion this year as against 591.8 billion for 2013. So you see that a lot is wrong, because even the revenue they're expecting is less than what we had last year, and so they are shifting more towards recurrent than increasing capital expenditure, which will grow the economy.
Well, you already mentioned the fact that some other core components of that budget were not properly addressed, like the fiscal deficit, for instance. It's actually 1.9% of the GDP. What's the implication of this?
Well, these are issues of paperwork. If you are talking about the fiscal deficit vis-a-vis the GDP, but we are still talking for a sum of about 911 billion. So the fiscal deficit as a percentage of GDP on paper is good, but beyond that, how it plays out in terms of things that will improve the livelihood of Nigerians is something that, as we know from previous experience, the fiscal deficit has not helped so much in doing those things that Nigerians expect out of their budget. If the opportunity we even lost yesterday, if you look at what has been happening, look at the website of the Budget Office of the Federation, you still have only the report of the first quarter of budget implementation in that website. There's none for the second quarter, none for the third quarter, for us to even know the trajectory of what is happening, because when you have information of what has happened, it helps you to now project what is likely to happen in the coming year. So as we speak today, a lot of things are still fundamentally flawed.
Okay, let's now look at the issue of the benchmark oil price, which is one of the reasons why the president had to postpone presenting the budget to the National Assembly. They've put it at $77.5 per barrel as agreed, as against the $74 proposed by the executive. What do you make of this in light of what's actually happening on the global market?
Well, I think everyone agrees it's too high, but again, it's not an excuse for delaying the presentation of the budgets. I think that point needs to be made very, very strongly. All the arguments about the benchmark could have taken place between July and September, and by the end of September, everyone should have agreed, so that you are able to submit your budget early October. But certainly everyone agrees, including people in the National Assembly who know that it's too high. We know from all the information available today that the pressure on the downward decline of oil prices will continue, and we accelerate next year. The Iranians are almost concluding their negotiations to remove sanctions, and they will start supplying about 4 million barrels per day into the market as from June. That means that the pressure on the oil price is going to increase significantly, and you're probably looking at struggling to maintain about $90 per barrel for the whole year of next year. That's apart from all the other countries that are increasing their production, the US becoming self-sufficient, Canada more than self-sufficient. So 7.5 is so close to 90 that you don't really have much room to save anything. Also looking at the fact that our excess crude account is almost completely drawn down, all the savings that we had from having a room between the benchmark and the market price in previous years has all been wiped out by drawdown on the exchange excess crude account. So we are really locking ourselves in a situation where we will have hardly any room to save any money next year.
Well, then the budget is also predicated on an oil output assumption of about 2.3883 million barrels per day. How realistic is this as well?
Well, the thing is that everyone, including the minister, everyone in government, every Nigerian knows that oil theft is there. And the minister herself said yesterday that's one of the reasons they have revenue challenges. We have not removed oil theft. There is no credible evidence that government is now more determined than before to fight oil theft. So that estimate of production is just some paperwork that is very, very unlikely to be achieved.
Well, all those numbers and the rest of it is all good, like Eze says, on paper. But then it's another thing to implement all these numbers that we see on paper and make it more realistic for the average Nigerian, whether on the street or wherever they are. But just before we take that, look at that holistically, let's quickly listen to this from the Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Muda Yusuf. He actually said something as regards implementation of the budget.